Morning. Thanks for the opportunity to come and share a little bit about this tool, and also hello to everybody online. My name is Luke Fawcett. I'm the Business Systems Program Manager with Union County Water. So Union County, just southeast of Charlotte. I'm sure everybody's kind of familiar with geography here in North Carolina. Our utility has approximately 55 to 60,000 water and sewer customers. So we just deal with that water and sewer side of the utility. Also, a part of this presentation is James Parker. He's an associate and senior project manager with Dewberry. James is joining us online, and if I get in a bind with some of the technical details, he'll chime in and help us out there. I want to talk today about a new tool that we've developed called an equipment integration system. It's a bit of a mouthful. We call it EIS for short, so that's how I'll refer to it from here on. But this is an application that we've developed using ESRI's Experience Builder. So I want to share a little bit of detail on some of the technical components about that. Before I get too far into the weeds, one of the more exciting and enjoyable components of this project is somewhat of the journey on how we got here. And I wanted to just give a little bit of a background and context because I think it's helpful for describing some of the most interesting component of this, not only for the EIS tool, but some of the other applications and tools that we're able to build now with some effort that we've taken on the front end. We went through as a utility, a master planning process. This isn't something that that's new to us. We do master plans for our water and sewer utility and updates to those quite regularly. But for this instance, it was new because we looked at our technology and tried to kind of create a vision of where we wanted to go and how we want to kind of comprehensively synthesize not only our technology and our applications, but our data underlying for our asset management program. So in general, not to go through the whole process and plan, think smart utility, smart water. Those are terms that are familiar with us, but how can we use our data to make better decisions, to be more efficient, to enhance our conservation efforts as a utility? And so having, like you see here, cool graphics showing our roadmap and inventory of all of our systems and tools was kind of a great process that kicked off things that would lead to our equipment integration system. Some milestones along the way for our utility, a relatively new division called Planning and Resource Management. That's the group that I'm with. Of course, if you're familiar as a utility, you're going to have your operations, you're going to have your engineering, you're going to have your business and finance group. The Planning and Resource Management handles kind of a planning component, but also our asset management program. And the things that tie into that is our geospatial, our GIS group. Personally, that's my favorite group. I have a GIS background, so I give a lot of attention to those folks. Also a technology group and a systems group who help maintain our systems and our enterprise applications. And then an analytics group. So whether it's a business analyst or some engineers who are specifically focused on asset management, this structure's worked out pretty well for us. We implemented our own work order system and completed that in 2021. I'll go into details about that here shortly. And then evolved into the ArcGIS enterprise world, an ESRI ELA. All right, so a lot of these milestones setting up kind of an infrastructure and an architecture for being at the place we are now and being able to develop some of these cool tools. I have to give 2 seconds to some of my partners. Kent's not here, but Evinion for Kent Rothrock for our GIS SDE support. Rock Technologies, they do our GIS managed services. And then our partner here with this project and our asset management program in general, Dewberry. So we have some good team players, an extension of our group and our utility, and they've been a big part of this journey along the way. So there are a lot of different technologies and innovations that can drive change and advance, our vision for a smart water utility. One of those big ones that we're in the middle of right now is a switch from an AMR meter reading system to an AMI. This is an advanced metering infrastructure. We have a big data management component to this project, but essentially establishing a network in our county where we can now read our meters rather than once a month, up towards every 15 minutes. And so you can imagine the data that comes along with that and what you can do with that. A lot of opportunities there. So that's one thing. A lot of BI capabilities, of course, the geospatial element. We have new standards and in place with operational technology to push out as much IoT as we can into our water and collection systems. And then a data management system. So I wanted to talk just a minute about what we call the hub, but essentially it's a database warehouse. This is something that we've developed in our GIS managed services with Rock Technology. We moved to AWS for our environment, and we've set up an instance in a SQL, we're a SQL shop, a SQL database that we can now synthesize a lot of our data, whether it's from GIS, whether it's from our work order system, whether it's from our customer information system, whether it's from our CCTV, all of these parts and pieces that are out there, we're now rolling up into what we call the hub and using SQL magic, SQL chaos to combine and blend our data and with various views and tables. So this came into play because this is something that we've done for our equipment integration system. So I want to go into a little bit about how we do that. Essentially, a project overview here for this tool. This is an application that connects and integrates various sources of info related to utility facility equipment. So for our utility, for example, we have over 60 pump stations, wastewater pump stations, 6 booster pump stations for our water system, about 10 water tanks, 2 water reclamation facilities, and then the big water treatment plant, the Yadkin plant that we're currently under construction with. And a part of each one of these facilities, we have various assets. Also, you could call them just pieces of equipment. So for example, a pump station could have, 50 different assets attached to it. It's a pump, it's a motor, it's a transducer, it's lighting, but all of these assets fall under this hierarchy of, our different facilities within our utility. So what we wanted to do is we have sources of information that are attached to all of this stuff. It could be from our work order system. So we're using Lucity as our work and maintenance management system. Contained in that is our framework and our data model for all of these assets, a part of the that are part of these facilities. Work orders, of course, and then some condition and criticality information that's attached to those as well. So that's a big source of info. This is a system that's on-prem, so it's within our domain. I wanted to put that out there. We have a media library and different materials that are attached to all of these assets. And I'm just going to say random. And this is one of the impetus for having this tool is because all of our, whether they're pictures, whether they're videos, whether they're O&M manuals, whether they're exploded parts views for our assets, these were kind of chaotically scattered throughout, depending on the person. So maybe it's on a desktop, maybe it's on a network drive, maybe it's on a thumb drive. Some stuff is attached into a work order system. But what we ran into was, and what we were hearing when we meet with our different groups, is that they were having a hard time managing this data and accessing it, especially when they're in the field, or especially when they're inside a facility and connection's bad. So that's one of the main reasons for this tool here. Of course, there's a geospatial component to all of this facility information. We haven't gone as far as to specifically tag or geolocate each individual asset, but they are located, by building or by site. I think that's an opportunity for the future when we look at things like ArcGIS Indoors or some other applications where we can kind of expand on that. But there is a geospatial element here. Keynotes features that were in different systems. And then in the future, reportings, readings, IoT or streaming data, whether it's from SCADA or some of the operational equipment that's out there, those are other sources of information. So we kind of inventoried this and looked at it kind of from a big picture and thought, let's assemble this, organize it, move it into our hub, and then see what we can do with it. One of the interesting components that I also wanted to introduce you to, and perhaps this isn't such a unfamiliar topic, but we kind of took an agile approach to this development tool. In an agile project, you prioritize some things over another. So we didn't necessarily scope this tool out or the whole project out at the start. We didn't say, here are our requirements. These are the things that we're going to try to do. These are the different phases, because in my experience with the utility, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with this, things change by the hour. And so we could go into this effort to kind of scope out this whole tool, and tomorrow the options would be totally different. So we wanted to stay really flexible. We wanted to stay agile when we were developing this. And we worked really closely with the maintenance crew and the process control crew and the water distribution crews and maintenance groups when we're kind of looking to kind of find the vision and find the different requirements. And the agile practice, you call these little user stories. So trying to find those specific cases when these things would come into, when the application would be come into use. So a lot of customer collaboration. We're prioritizing working software over kind of a final product, and you're really responding to change. So we had some really good whiteboard workshops. If you like whiteboarding, those are kind of fun, and pulled a lot of info out at the beginning. And then you kind of meet with them in various stages to say, is this the direction we're still want to go? Do we need to pivot? Do we need to look at other priorities? And you kind of work in a flexible way. Some of our early visioning started to come together conceptually to find a view or a picture of an application on a mobile device, like an iPad, where we could see our assets in a list, or we could search through to find our different assets for some, building or some one of our facilities. You could pull up nameplate info. So, what I mean by that is like manufacturer, serial number, specific assets that relate to that piece of equipment. And then, of course, there's the media component, being able to search for a piece of equipment and then right away pull up all of the associated media that's attached to that. I'm going to pause here, and you might say, isn't that what a work order system is for? Maybe. It's probably going through your head. It'd be nice to have. Our work order system works great. It has its pros and cons like every other system does. But for this case, when one of our maintenance technicians is in a building, in a facility, and they're looking right at an asset, being able to go to that asset and pull up, really quickly, all of the information about it, all the associated media about it, that was something that was just missing in our technology and some of the systems that we had. Another component here is, in addition to the field app that the technician would use, we also wanted kind of a desktop view for a supervisor or a manager when we have new assets coming in, new either replaced or new, a way for that supervisor to go and immediately link up any of the associated material or media to that asset. I'll even go further, and something that's come along the way is when we're working with our consultants on new facilities, giving access to our consultants to this application. So rather than us having to link up that media, one of the deliverables is, here's access to the tool, here's your list of assets, link up all the pictures and the O&M's manual, and that's kind of a requirement as a submittal to the project. So we're hoping that streamlines a lot of it and keeps kind of that consistency in place as well. Anybody familiar with Experience Builder? This was kind of our first use in it, and it's pretty cool. And if you're familiar with AGOL or ArcGIS Enterprise, think web app builder on steroids. So a lot of the same widgets are in there, but we're using the developer model, and it gives us the ability to kind of also add kind of custom widgets to it. So it's a platform for apps, has a real modern interface. It's a mobile first design, very configurable. And again, a lot of cool widgets. We all like widgets as geographers, so we'll throw in as many of those as we can. But if you haven't seen it, you can check it out. You can really extend and kind of do some different things with some of the web apps that you might have built through some of the more traditional methods. All right, this slide here is a lot, but I want to give kind of a high level view of what the architecture is for this tool. So first, the user interface. We have Experience Builder, two applications, like I mentioned, one for our maintenance crews and our maintenance staff, and then one desktop version that also works on a mobile for kind of our supervisors. We would deploy this on an IIS server. This is also within our managed services in AWS. So easy to spin up, easy to deploy. Our EIS viewer has embedded a survey 123 survey. This is for taking and uploading photos. So our maintenance staff still have the ability to take their own pictures or add their own media when they're out there looking at an asset, in addition to kind of that desktop view. There's also a really cool custom tree view widget, and I'll show that and demo that here in just a minute. But that shows the asset hierarchy. And then we have a custom widget for uploading files to an S3 media store. So in AWS, if you're not familiar with an S3 bucket, it's essentially just a storage bucket that AWS uses to manage all different types of media. It can handle large files, and it's a kind of a great mechanism to store a lot of data. The second tier is a logical tier. So we're building this off of ArcGIS Enterprise. And then we have, so we use that to publish a lot of our REST services that are in our hub or a database warehouse. Also used to manage kind of our users and groups. So the security component in here is tied to the same users that our maintenance staff use in our portal. We have something called an AWS Lambda. This is used to securely upload new media directly to our S3 bucket. This is kind of a serverless event that's event-driven, that just helps move some data in the right place. And then finally, there's this data tier, a data warehouse built on SQL Server. This is our data hub. That's our primary data store. We move work order data from our Lucity, which is on-prem, up to this SQL hub system in AWS. And then, of course, the AWS S3 bucket that I mentioned. All right, so I want to go into three interesting and unique technology components with this tool, and then I'll show you a little bit about what it looks like. One of the first questions we had to ask ourselves when we were looking to move data up to this hub is what kind of tools we would use to do this. So we had kind of a spin-off white paper that was attached to our technology master plan that really dived in and looked at all of the different approaches and the different tools that we could potentially use to move data from various enterprise systems, either on-prem or in the cloud or out in our operational technology, into our hub. We shortlisted a couple things. SQL SSIS did pretty well. There's a couple different iPaaS solutions that were kind of software as a service tools or data management tools as a service. AWS had one, but ultimately we selected the ArcGIS data interoperability tool. We shorten that. We just call it FME. And I think some of you are kind of familiar with that, but it's a great kind of tool to build models and move your data around from various sources. It meant all the use cases that we came up with is very cost effective under our ELA. And there was also a really kind of native familiar look at it using ArcGIS Pro integration. So again, that was the data interoperability tool. Looked at a lot of different use cases, and it came out on top. So we have some different workbenches. I think we have about 4 or 5 different workbenches, and this is what you call your models to move data around. I'm not going to go to all of them in detail, but these are scheduled tasks that move data. For example, our Lucity system, which is on-prem, it moves it up nightly, whether it's work orders or asset hierarchy, it moves that up into our hub space. We also blend a lot of our Lucity data with our GIS data to publish these services that flow into this Experience Builder tool. We have a media management. So we have a couple FME workbenches that move our media around, and I'll talk about some of the nuances to that here in just a second. And then a GIS push. So again, setting up these different FME workbenches. You can't see this. I know there's a lot of detail here, but it looks really cool on a slide. It looks fairly familiar to like a model builder that you would see like in an old ArcMap. But essentially these FME tools are super powerful, a great way to move data around and to kind of get it to where you need to. Another interesting technology component that we had here for the tool was using the AWS S3 for our media management. Now, if you're familiar with Survey 123 and some of the ArcGIS collector stuff, you can add pictures and attachments, and that moves it to kind of your tables and your SDE geodatabases. What we found is, although both use blob storage, the S3 bucket and the attachment tables and SDE, the S3 was a lot more cost effective, and it had performed really well for large files, more flexible, so we could put a variety of different media types in the S3 where we were a little bit more limited in using attachments in the SDE geodatabase. And then we could also use, our media could be browsed outside of the ArcGIS tools if we used it in an S3. So we had two different things in our Experience Builder. The Media Manager app uploads these files directly to an S3. So this is the tool that our crews would use if they just want to take a picture of a motor or some transducer or some equipment, and they want to tag it to that piece of equipment. And then there's also our custom viewer in the management application where we upload the photo, and then we have kind of an FME tool to move that around to the right place into the S3 bucket. The third little tool here I want to talk about is just our custom tree view widget, and I'll demo it in a second. And it's just a custom, tree filter that organizes our equipment. But what's really cool about it is it works really well. It's really fast. It performs really well. And again, just being able to kind of blend our data, put it into a good structure in our hub. We had some custom tools here that would allow a really kind of quick way to filter down, to find the piece of equipment, and you're not waiting a really long time. So we were just surprised how well it worked, and I thought I'd throw it out there. Experience Builder out of the box widgets were a good fit for about 80% of our user interface, but we did, like I say, come up with a custom widget here for the tree view using some ESRI API JavaScript, and then a TypeScript code. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we have some FME workbenches that move this data around that this custom widget is looking at. So I want to show a little bit of a, let me see if I can get this to play here. I have this recorded if I can, oh, here we go, it's going. I'll try the other one here in a second. This is just a little bit of a recorded version of the tree view that you can see. On the left are all of our different hierarchies. You can drill down to, I think here we're at a pump station, and then you can see in the red dots, those are all of our pieces of equipment. So I'm picking here a pump isolation valve, and you can see as you click along each one, the pane on the right shows the table that's associated. So that's data coming out of Lucity. So we got data coming in different spots, but the custom widget just worked really well to kind of navigate those. Here's this is the EIS tool that a lot of our technicians will use. So on the left, again, you have the asset tree view. We got 3 tabs in here. The first tab shows the nameplate info. So this is data that is embedded with in Lucity that's attached to each asset. This is information that we populate or we import in when we add new assets or update assets into our work order system. On the right, you're going to see the related media. So all of the different pieces of media that's attached to that piece of equipment. And you'll have kind of a snapshot little picture in there. I'll show you in just a second. You can also click on it and open it up in your browser and view it kind of in a bigger form. And that's really nice. You're not downloading each attachment or PDF. You're storing it in your cache. So now our iPads in the field, we don't have to go out and clean those up, after a week from, all the storage, all the different media attached to it. Then we have this feature here, this key notes, where the guys in the field can add different notes for each piece of equipment, whether it's, hey, this one's, a little sensitive, you got to treat it with care, to whatever else they add, whatever else kind of notes they add. And just to kind of tie back to a previous thing I was talking about in our agile project method here, we really worked closely with all the crews to figure out which features would be most important, and trying to integrate that into a workflow that would match how they would actually work in the field. So the nameplate info was key. Having this tree search function was something that they talked about and we kind of worked through, and then the media. That second tab, I'll show you in just a second. Let me go ahead and I'll start this little demo and show you how it works. Right now it's navigating to the tree view here in just a second. I'll let it catch up. You know what, maybe I'll just do a live one. I'm going to try that. All right, so far so good. I'm going to navigate to one of our water reclamation facilities. You can kind of see how this is organized. One of our older plants here, Crooked Creek. I'm going to slide down here to, I think it's the influent pump station. And let me pull up this lift pump 1. So selecting through these, again, you'll see the nameplate info, have my related media, my keynotes. The second tab, when we're still select on it, this is where our kind of our mapping view comes in. Right now a little bit just tied to the actual location of the plant or the facility, but in the future expanding that to more of the facility footprint so we can drive down to different buildings. And then we're also pulling in work order info. So pulling up a piece of equipment and being able to kind of look through the different work orders attached to it. We have a backlog or a future phase where we can then click on the work order and perhaps bring that to our work order management system. But we have that capability there as well. And then this third tab here showing new media. So this is, again, kind of using the survey 123 function, but adding the equipment ID, and then tagging on, a picture or a video or a piece of that piece of equipment. The second tool here, and I'll bring you back to this, and I'll show you some of the media that we can open up for each piece of equipment. Again, we got a nice error there. But adding in the different media, it works pretty quick. You can add that in, and with a little bit of a refresh or a click from a different asset, you can pull up that picture, pretty much instantaneously. Any questions? The one piece I didn't show, but it's very similar here, is on the desktop management side. And I think, do we close that PowerPoint? We might have. There we go. Thanks. The one piece here that I'll just kind of show a little bit of a view on is Are we sharing? There we go. Is that full screen? I think it is. This is just a screenshot of the media manager. So when we have the supervisor view, being able to upload the different media manager. What you see down here on the bottom is a view of the actual S3 bucket. So you can actually scroll through all the media that's in there. See if I can pull that up really quick. And I'll see if this will play. It will not play. Live demos. Any questions though with this? Yeah.
So for that work order and that part, is that where, are you able to insert work orders from there? Or is it something like it just tracks the work orders on that site or both?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the question was in the component of the EIS where we have the work order view. That is, you can see that this was on that second tab. That's mainly just for reference. So again, at some point, I think we can make the jump from looking at all the different work orders associated with that equipment over to our work order system, but then using that to kind of compile that work order data. So it's a little bit of, there's some little bit of overlap, but what this does is it just kind of compiles a lot of that reference information. So you're able in the media, so you can get that snapshot or you can get that background info before you really jump into your work order. You want me to read through items in the application design necessitated the use of development edition of Experience Builder. But yeah, good question. So the main one, again, we were able to use 80% of the functionality with Experience Builder with some of the native widgets. One of the things that was custom for us that we needed to build was the widget that controlled the tree view. So we used some custom coding and some scripting tools to create that tree view widget. But for the most part, everything else was out of the box. So we started, good question. We started, the question was, how long did it take to design and implement? We started this spring, maybe March. So started our workshops, our scoping, kind of our sprints, meeting with the different groups, and then we'd have kind of these development efforts along the way. So it's a little bit backwards. I actually deploy this and we'll introduce our crews to it in 2 weeks. So I'm sharing it with you before some feedback, which might be a good or bad thing. But this won't be familiar to them. They've kind of seen it and been through the process along the way. And then, you know, for us, these processes, this development and this implementation never really stops on this. So we'll apply more money to it, enhance it more, and just have subsequent phases along the way to kind of meet their needs. Yeah, sure. We were not, thanks. Just keep telling me. The good question, the question was that our agile method something that we were familiar with? How long have we been using it? Has it been difficult? So I would say that we had early on with our group and trying to implement some of this asset management and technological change, and really at a higher level cultural change on how we viewed this. We had some failures along the way, and that was when we were trying to plan out and scope long-term some of the projects we were doing and just failure after failure after failure. So we took a step back and looked at this agile method that saw shorter sprints, much more interaction, much more communication with our end users. And we had a lot of really big wins on smaller projects that really we applied this to all of our projects at this point. So it was, I think it helped build that culture change because you're interacting so much with the end user. And, whether it's a group in the field, a lot of them weren't accustomed to a lot of that technological change, and it was hard for them. But being them and kind of getting for them more of the user requirements and being able to pivot, that went a long way to building that relationship. So we're pretty successful with it now. James, my partner in crime here, he also mentions the custom widget development requires the dev edition. Also to download and deploy the app as a zip file to deploy on the web server. Hopefully that answers the previous question there as well on the developer edition. Yes. So the question was, did we start using the developer edition or started out of box? I think we decided early on to go with the developer edition just because we had some resources that knew how to use it, and this was kind of the first tool that we've used for Experience Builder. So that's my recollection, is that we just started out using it just in case we had some of these custom tools and custom widgets that we wanted to build. Again, Dewberry, we use Dewberry in their geospatial group. So they're really the application and kind of the brains on that development side with the Experience Builder. Any other questions? Thank you.